Alright, yesterday we talked about the Dharma lineage of the Kagyu tradition. His Holiness at that time taught on this aspect, especially regarding the choice between the Yidam and the Guru. The Guru is very important. At that time, Marpa asked his Guru one more question regarding his Dharma lineage: who will inherit and propagate my Dharma lineage? At that time, Naropa asked him, who is your dearest disciple that you think most highly of? At that time, Marpa Lotsawa reported this way, saying, he said, my most beloved disciple is Awo Thuchen, or Thopaga, Milarepa. It is him. I treat him as the one more important than my heart. Then at this time, after Venerable Naropa heard this, he joined his palms together and spoke a verse of praise. Like the sun shining on the snow mountain in the northern land, in a place of darkness, there is one called Mila Thopaga. To this venerable one I prostrate. At that time, this verse was very famous. At that time, his guru's guru, which is to say Milarepa's guru, was Marpa Lotsawa, and Marpa Lotsawa's guru was Naropa. When Naropa heard about Milarepa, he said that in the northern land of Tibet, in a dark place, it is like sunlight shining on a snow mountain, very majestic. To such a Thopaga I will prostrate. At that time, upon finishing this verse, he paid homage in the direction of the land of Tibet. Then he began to bow, and at that time the mountain and trees also paid homage together. I mentioned this in that text. Yes, it's also later. At that time, Venerable Naropa was at Odantapuri University on Hiranya Prabhat Parvat mountain. Odantapuri at that time, along with Nalanda University and Vikramashila University, these were India's three great monasteries. Later, when Islam came to destroy them, all three great monasteries were destroyed. But Odantapuri was mainly the place where Vajrayana flourished most. I mentioned some of this in A Journey to the West. It's not far from Nalanda University, and later the Muslims turned it into a charnel ground. Even now, looking at photos of it, the situation is still not good. At that time, it was a place where Vajrayana was extremely flourishing. This happened at Odantapuri University, situated at Hiranya Prabhat Parvat mountain, not far from Nalanda University. Naropa lived there at that time, and these days if you go to visit that place, you will notice that the mountain and trees still bend slightly down toward the land of Tibet. Later, on another occasion, after Marpa Lotsawa returned to Tibet, Marpa Lotsawa told Milarepa, you need to make an observation of your dreams. How can our Kagyu Dharma lineage be propagated in the future? That evening, Milarepa had a dream. In the dream, he dreamed of a shrine hall with 4 great pillars, and in particular, on the top of the northern pillar, there was an eagle. That eagle gave birth to a baby eagle, and then numerous baby eagles filled the sky. The next day, Marpa Lotsawa explained the dream, saying, the 4 pillars in your dream predict that I will have 4 great disciples. Who are these 4 great disciples? Miton Sompo of Tsangrong. This one later also appears often in Milarepa's biography. Certain Wangge of Tolpo, and also Ngokton Chodor of Sheng and Milarepa of Kungthang. Yes, there are 4 great disciples. The eagle on the northern pillar symbolizes you. This should refer to you, Milarepa. The baby eagle it gave birth to is your just now it was Milarepa. The baby eagle that was born actually is your son-like disciple Gampopa, the Daod Shonu or Chandraprabha. This Chandraprabha, as for the flock of eagles filling the sky, it symbolizes the lineage disciples of Gampopa, who will spread the Kagyu teaching throughout the world. Regarding Gampopa, we should have been in 2018. In 2018, we taught Gampopa's The Precious Garland of the Supreme Path. At that time, we taught 28 classes. It seems last year they should have compiled it, saying at that time it was over 300,000 words, 2 volumes. At that time, we also formed a connection. Although we haven't studied especially many Kagyu Dharma lineages, Gampopa's The Precious Garland of the Supreme Path, at that time we also taught it quite extensively. We should have taught this much. Gampopa is extremely remarkable, so His Holiness's teaching basically covers the Kagyu Dharma lineage, and one should have some understanding. Basically, everyone knows the specific details, exactly as Marpa Lotsawa predicted by explaining Milarepa's dream. In the time of Gampopa, his most outstanding disciples were the first Karmapa Dusum Khenpa, should be the first Karmapa. The first Karmapa was Dusum Khenpa, the second was Pakshi, and the third should be Rangjung Dorje. And also the protector of migrating beings, Phagmo Drupa, who were born in the same year. His Holiness said they were the same age, and I wondered if they really were the same age. Later I specially went to check, and when checking, indeed they were both born in the same year, born in the year 1110 CE. So His Holiness's memory compared to ours is quite very difficult. Because some historical dates are also disputed, they're easy to forget. So these two great masters were the same age, born in the same year. Their lineage disciples formed such as Param Kagyu, and also Pagdru Kagyu, Kama Kagyu, and Salpa Kagyu. These are called the four major schools of the Dakpo Kagyu. Then Drikung Kagyu and Drukpa Kagyu, and also Taklung Kagyu, Yazang Kagyu, Trofu Kagyu, and also Shugseb Kagyu, Yelpa Kagyu, and Martsang Kagyu. These are called the 8 sub-schools of Kagyu. Now, in their Kagyu historical introductions of the Dharma lineages, almost every school exists, especially in Bhutan. Now, in various places in Tibet, they are also relatively flourishing. As such, the Dharma teaching of the Kagyu tradition spread across the world. If just focusing on the propagation of the Buddha Dharma, speaking of the teachings of the Drukpa school, people all say its coverage is extremely vast, like an eagle that flies for 18 days and cannot see the edge. So that Drukpa Kagyu just mentioned, its Dharma lineage has already spread to where an eagle flying for 18 days reaches, hasn't it? Perhaps in Tibet there is some exaggeration or something like that. Who knows how far an eagle flies in one day? Throughout Tibet, from Nepal flying to, if an eagle flies to Mount Eme, who knows how many days it would take? This should now be something that some Western researchers who daily carry long cameras photographing birds, tracking them, they should know. But in the traditional accounts there are such statements. This Drukpa Kagyu is extremely flourishing. Later, the spreading of the lineages of the Red Crown Karmapa and the Black Crown Karmapa was much more widespread. Regarding the Red Crown and Black Crown, there are different historical records. According to the historical record, in the pure vision of the first Karmapa, 100,000 Dakinis manifested their hair as a black crown and offered it to him. Later, the Mongol emperor in the Yuan dynasty, that emperor was Emperor Togon Timur, made a black crown as an offering which has been passed down to the current Karmapa. At that time, the 17th Karmapa, the current Karmapa, he at that time also said, if I go abroad, I want to go abroad to retrieve my crown. My crown is outside and I'm preparing to bring it back. Later, the government felt this statement was correct. Later, although he is outside, inside in various aspects, his statement at that time was relatively moderate. He said, when I get it in my hands, I'll return. He said this at that time, I remember. It seems like 1985. Yes, he was born in 1985. His Holiness went in 1993. So when we went, the 16th Karmapa had already passed away. The previous one had already passed away. The red crown was offered by the Chinese emperor to the first Shamapa, Drakpa Sengye, and has been passed down from this. The names Black Crown and Red Crown came from this. Also, the Tibetan legend says that once in a place called Minyak, in Ratibum Dzong, in this place, at one time there appeared 100,000 monks who were able to fly. Of course, this is probably because some people in Tibet have quite good faith. At that time, there might have been such stories or legends. Although such legends exist, including at Kathok, there are said to be 100,000 rainbow body achievers. But if we really look at modern archaeology and research, it might be a bit difficult. Because in today's world, the human population should be at its highest in recorded history. Now, the entire Tibetan population is about 6 million. Then at that time, if there were 100,000 who could fly, then perhaps, who knows how many others who couldn't fly there were. There might also be many questions. But in any case, there are some, including in India, it's also like this, among the common people, there were so many monks who could fly and so many rainbow body achievers. At that time, there were certainly a certain number. This is in some individual biographies of omniscient Longchenpa, including in the biography of the great accomplished master Melong Dorje. At that time, there were many monastics who could fly, using their robes as wings, then flying around observing Tugal. I previously went to the Gyarong area, and indeed there are many such legends there. In the past, there were many with miraculous powers, monastics flying around. There are such accounts. But saying 100,000, there are such accounts. Perhaps at that time His Holiness also cited this. Was it Kagyu or Minyak is now the area of Daofu and Kangding? That area is called the Minyak region. So in those places there are indeed such legends. It seems in the past in the Minyak area there was a Lama who was quite good with history. When His Holiness went there in 1986, that Lama was called Aso, and His Holiness also asked him, in your area, were there 100,000 monks who could fly? Is there really such a thing? Specifically, where was this? In any case, at that time, I remember he didn't really. In the accounts, there are such statements. Of course, this is probably, in any place we go, there are some such legends. Perhaps there were many people, but later generations might, just like we say 100,000 people achieved rainbow body. At that time, who knows how many humans there were in Tibet. Because regarding Kathok's 100,000 rainbow bodies, it has a specific time period. It should be over 800 years ago or something, that Kadampa Deshek. We find this in the history of Tibetan esoteric Buddhism. So this time period can be calculated from now. So in this way, perhaps some things in our history also have some different accounts. As such, the lineage masters of the Kagyu school were like golden mountains arranged in perfect order, extremely majestic, appeared in the world one after another, up until the 16th Karmapa and your own guru. All these gurus came and enlightened the modern world, appearing continuously. So the 16th Karmapa and then your guru refers to, at that time we were at Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche Center at Mile High Church, and it was also mainly for the disciples there. So it refers to Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, between your guru appearing continuously. The above is just a very brief introduction of the main lineage masters of Kagyu. If I were to talk about them in more detail, the recounting of the life stories of each of them alone could not be finished in a few months. Indeed, it's like this. Regarding Milarepa, originally when I was in middle school, later I got sick and stayed overnight, later at Lower Lokma, then returned and took half a month's leave. There was a doctor of mine called Akdarlo who read Milarepa's biography to me every day. I felt it was especially good listening every day. Later my leave was up 15 days and we hadn't even finished half of Milarepa's biography. So I had to leave, had to go back to school. Then I felt very regretful. It seemed when he was reading, there was such a feeling as if I were really at the scene of the biography. So just Milarepa's biography alone, His Holiness surely couldn't finish it in several months. So His Holiness just briefly mentioned it. Now I will talk about the instructions of actual practice transmitted by the Kagyu lineage masters. There are three main transmissions. The first, the uncommon secret mantra practice that leads to the attainment of Vajradharahood, transmitted from the Mahasiddha Tilopa, thus achieving the fruition of Vajradhara. The second is the joint practice of Sutrayana and Mantrayana, transmitted from Lodrak Marpa Lotsawa. The practice of the Kagyu tradition is divided into two aspects. This is slightly different from what we had before and after. Here he says mainly there is the Sutrayana, as taught in the Uttaratantra Shastra Mahamudra, and also Vajrayana Mahamudra, two aspects, or Sutra Mahamudra, or Mahamudra of reality, and Mantra Mahamudra, or Mahamudra of the union of bliss and emptiness. That is to say, the essential teachings of the Mahayana combining Sutra and Tantra. This is from Marpa Lotsawa. Then the third from Jetsun Milarepa, he, at the very beginning, the stage-by-stage practice that starts with the beginning practices of abandoning all non-virtue, then practicing the Hinayana, then practicing the Mahayana, then practicing Vajrayana, including Tomo, wisdom mystic heat, and after the practice of the magical body became stabilized, only then naturally realizing the essence of Mahamudra, later achieving the Mahayana secret Mantra Vajrayana practice, and the fruition of Vajradharahood in a single life. Below, the main topic is now, I will primarily draw from the transmission of Milarepa to briefly explain, because it is an easy path that includes all stages of practice that can be carried out by anyone of either greater or lesser capacity, a simple, easy to practice path with complete stages. His Holiness below mainly for what all people can accept, a teaching of Milarepa. To follow this path, the disciple must first understand the very nature of suffering in cyclic existence that involves birth and death, and thus generate the mind of renunciation. We need to generate renunciation. Then secondly, you need to cherish others more than yourself with such altruistic bodhicitta. Generate the supreme awakened mind of bodhicitta. Thirdly, you need to cultivate and meditate on the pure view that is none other than the mind transmission of Vajradhara, the non-dual, indivisible pure view, as taught in our three principal aspects of the path, renunciation, bodhicitta, and the non-dual wisdom view. So here, basically also through this method to understand and thus achieve the fruition of Buddhahood. Alright, we'll stop reading here today. Okay, tomorrow we'll continue teaching.
Bandara Banma Sadar